us a little bit about yourself. And Andrew, I see you're starting to record. Okay. So as we're getting ready to get started, please tell everyone a little bit about yourself as we begin the process again. This is Mr. Rick Bell, who is running for the seat of a common pleas judge, one of the 34. He is looking forward to assume that bench in January.
Thank you, Bishop Ward, and hello, everyone. Good evening to you all. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll get started right away, so if there's questions. A little bit about Richard Bell. Please call me Rick. My mother calls me Richard Andrew, still to this day. She is 92 years old, very, very smart. I am the 8th of 10 children, and I grew up in Cleveland Heights over near Coventry, just off of Coventry, on the border of Cleveland Heights and East Cleveland. Kind of a poor middle class because there was 10 of us. And my father worked at Neela Park in East Cleveland for 50 years to support us and put us all through college, which was their dream. I can't tell my story, Bishop, without telling a little bit about them. It's because it's their commitment to their children that kind of drives me. Their faith and their imbuing into us a belief that we are public servants, that our lives are not our own. We're here to serve others and to right wrongs. So to that end, my brothers and sisters have mostly gone into the social fields, whether it's medicine or it's social work or teaching. I'm the only lawyer, and being a lawyer, I guess, it's supposed to be a noble profession, but I don't think everybody is. So to finish up about me, I try to live my life each day with my wife and 4 children to do the same thing that my parents did with us, which is try to make sure that they understand that they're not here for themselves. They're here for the community, and they're here to make this world a better place by the time they leave it. So that kind of defines who I am, I hope.
Okay. How will you help right the wrongs of a flawed criminal justice system that has preyed upon poor people and minorities?
Yeah, very good question. What I've learned over many years is no one person can do this. And the people that kind of set themselves up as the champions, as the person that has the only answer, it always fail. We have to have a team approach between public servants, whether they're judges or assistant prosecutors or public defenders, and the community. A relationship that is not strong enough currently. And unless the people that are at the Justice Center in whatever positions they have understand that they're tied directly to the people in the community and consider them family and know that they might disappoint them should they lose their way and not do justice and not be merciful. So the way to right the wrongs is to specifically define the things that we want to change, so we're focused. And then, such as bail reform or bonds, take on 1, 2, 3 things and take them on together with the people that do have that power and that ability. As somebody that's been in the system for a long time, there are many judges that I know that I will be able to, right from the beginning, do just that. Get on certain committees that will help things that need to be changed. One of those things, if I can quickly go into it, is my plan to have a sentencing database. I intend from day one, and I will, have a database that not only that will explain the sentences that are given to each and every person, whether it's probation, how long. Of course, we would have gender, race, name of person, if there are victims, if it's a property crime or what you might think of as a crime of violence. and what the outcome is. Are the judge's sentences? So we can start building to right this wrong, building this trust that has to happen one by one. There are so many judges. You said 34 judges, and you can only make this happen by having a relationship with the majority of those judges. So my plan is to do that, and I believe that other judges will then follow in that vein, because I am, and I'm not afraid of it. I think that's a very actually good thing. It'll keep me righted in case I somehow veer off. I'll make sure that I'm giving proportional sentencing, that it's fair, and then it can be viewed by people, and people can tell me that, Judge Rick, here's where we think you're going off track.
What new or different perspective will you bring to the court that you desire to join?
The perspective is, as a lawyer, my first real boss, although I was hired before Stephanie came on board, she explained to me that there are people in our families, each of our families, that need assistance and need help. The perspective that I will have is that, from the type of practice that I have now, is that there are certain crimes that are serious, but the vast majority of crimes need to be handled differently, very differently. I think we need to have early release centers. These release centers where people would not be booked into the jail, which is being used as a prison by the system in order to collect pleas, needs to end. And if we have the release booking centers for mental health issues and for drug addiction issues, then there won't be an intake at the jail. We won't have a Hotel California where you can go in, but you don't go out for a while. And I think that's the perspective of the thing that I'd like to see change quickly in order for us to make the type of changes that I think need to be made.
What are your experiences with criminal litigation?
I've tried well over 100 cases, mostly cold case homicides and rape cases using DNA. I solved the Gloria Pointer case for Dr. Yvonne Pointer. And there are many cases just like that, where I had hired homicide detectives that were retired, African-American homicide detectives from the homicide unit, the city of Cleveland, that could go into the community with confidence and gain trust, family members, in order to interview them and also find the DNA they needed to find. For over the past 6-7 years, since 2013, I've led the rape kit task force, all of those rape kits that were left on the shelves by the police department that were not tested. And I've led a 40-person team with advocates who will advocate for the victims, mostly East Side women and some children, that we've been able to get the serial rapists off the street and right the wrongs for these victims that felt disenfranchised, felt as if correctly so, the police weren't properly caring for their cases.
Being a prosecutor, you've had the opportunity to watch cases really open and fold. And how do you view a pro se litigant if you're on the bench now as a judge? Do you think you can fairly adjudicate case pro se litigants?
That's a very good question, and I welcome that you ask it. This is the question. Okay, you're a prosecutor. How do we know that you're not going to persecute? My take on as an assistant prosecutor was to always protect the record. The defendant, whether they're a pro se litigant or they're represented, is a citizen of this county, and I represent them as well. And so the case needs to be righteous and needs to be filled with evidence before you bring it. That's why I created a special investigations division, because I was not happy with the level of completeness that was being provided to us by the police departments. So as a judge on a pro se litigant case, I would follow those new cases that allow them to represent themselves. I would provide standby counsel for them. And I would make sure that on every step of the way that they understood what was happening, including giving them the rights to object, to speak up, to go to sidebars if they need to. You have to treat them the way that you would want to be treated if you chose to make that decision and be a pro se litigant.
Okay. How would you hold police officers to the same? Would you hold them to the same standards as you do the common citizen?
Yes, absolutely. The police should not just, they have a hard job, but there's no doubt about it. But a lot of people have hard jobs. And so the police, when they testify, would have to somehow build that same trust and confidence with a jury that any other witness would. So just because they're a police officer, they wouldn't get a pass in my courtroom. If it was a one police officer, a he said, and a he said case, there may not be enough evidence there because I know from my practice as an assistant prosecutor in dealing with some police officers, a minority, that sometimes the cases aren't complete, and some of the things that they say are no more accurate or truthful than a regular citizen, a regular witness. In part of what I do is everything of what I do is scrutinize the police work and give it back to them and say there's not enough. And that's difficult. I've had to stand up to police regularly and tell them, you don't have enough here, and I'm not going to charge this case. You need to go back to the drawing board and get more evidence. And there have been several cases where I've been known to stand pat and not be pushed into seeking charges at the grand jury until it's ready. And sometimes there are cases that are not ready. I've had hundreds of cases like that over my career where they're just not ready, and I've had to stand up and tell the police there's not enough evidence here.
What do you perceive as the greatest obstacle to justice in the division that you're seeking to be a judge?
To say it kindly, I'm going to say indifference. I think that there's a personal commitment that a public servant, especially a judge, has to have. Every single day when you put your feet on the floor, you better have examined your conscience about what you did the day before and what type of judge you intend to be that day. If you're going to be fair to all, if you're going to be merciful, if you're going to bend over backwards, have the right temperament to make sure that you aren't abusing your power. And this is something that I don't think that it's maturity, but I don't think that a lot of people have it when they're younger, and that's an impediment. But there's a systemic impediment of, if I said indifference, another way of saying it is just implicit bias. And this bias has to be recognized through self-examination. If you don't understand that it exists, if you don't understand what privilege is, if you don't understand certain advantages that one human being might have over another in how they were raised or what their future might hold for them or their job prospects, then you're missing the game. And just because you're a judge on the bench for 1 year or 20 years, you have to come to the game every day with a clean conscience and try to do the right thing then, and be ready and willing to be open and transparent and to change. And if you have some learning to do, you better listen and you better learn.
So what is your vision for the future of our judicial system here in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County?
Proportionality. The sentencing statute that was created in 1996 is very clear what judges should be doing at sentencing. They should not be giving a sentence, whether it's probation or prison, any longer than is necessary to rehabilitate the offender, number one. And number two, protect the community. Nowhere in the sentencing statute does it say anything about punishing the offender. Nowhere. But I think that the culture hasn't changed to the point where people are realizing what is the appropriate sentence to get this person back up on their feet and protect the community. And probation should be used, community controlled sanctions should be used more than prison. And if you have to send somebody to prison, it should be for the shortest amount of time possible in order to let them up. People need to be redeemed, and they need to know that there's a plan for redemption. They need to know what they need to do to get out of that bad place and back in. And I'm not talking about the few minority that should be sent to prison. I'm talking about the murderers and the rapists that I'm used to dealing with. But I was the head of the diversion unit Stephanie Tubbs-Jones started, and the low-level offenders, where we put people into diversion, alternative resolutions like that need to be used and utilized. Short terms of probation. Some judges put people on longer terms of probation. It's a chokehold. It can stifle somebody's growth, and you have to. My vision is actually engaging the defendants at pleas and prior to sentencing, so you can have a discussion with them about what their goals are and what they want to do with their lives. I know it sounds a little fatherly, but you don't raise 4 children without having some of that thought process, that being a father and being somebody that they can look up to, somebody that they feel like they don't want to disappoint. So I will not be the harsh judge. I'm going to surprise a lot of people. And I think it's because I've had the luxury of having those hard cases like murders and rapists, where you would expect that if you have a serial rapist, they need to go to prison. But I have a much different philosophy on the medium and low level offenders, and I intend to work very hard to prove that.
What
time?
Okay.
That's time, Bishop.
Well, Mr. Bell, I thank you for being a part of our Zoom conference and our rating and endorsement process. God bless you, and you'll be hearing from us soon, I'm sure.